of all the programs you have installed, which it just spits out as a little text file you can email to yourself or take over and stick. You plug it into your new computer, you say, install all these programs, please. You don't have to futz around finding your CD and typing in the license code and all the rest of it. It just downloads it all and installs it, configures it, and away you go, you're ready to run your new computer. It's awesome. It's like, it's the best way I know how to compute. It's what I do now. If someone comes up to me and says, you know, I don't really know much about computers, I'm not sure what to do, I just go like, just use it. It's easy. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you do have to be vigilant, but vigilance in Ubuntu is pretty straightforward because by default it sets up to check itself for updates every day. It gives you a list of those updates. It tells you whether they're critical security updates. It updates all of your programs, so not like a Mac or a Windows machine where you have one updater for Windows, one updater for Firefox, and one updater for Chrome, and one updater for your mail program. It's just one program that runs every day, and it says, I've got these updates. You go make update, go now, and it patches your computer, and they're fully patched. But you're right, you do have to stay vigilant. But again, there's no system I know that's easier to be vigilant with than one where all your packages are managed centrally.
So where do you get that?
Ubuntu.com.
Pardon?
Ubuntu.com. ubuntu.com. Yeah.
Can you be familiar with the Internet Security Act or the bill that's in the Senate and the House?
Sure.
Can you explain what that is?
So I've lost track of where it is now, but it's, you're talking about the NCAA? Yeah, so I mean, basically it's another one of these spying and retention bills, and it's like the one that was proposed in Canada, there's an Internet Security Bill proposed in Canada, it's like the Sneakers Charter proposed in the United Kingdom. Many of the so-called Western democracies, or Western so-called democracies, I guess they are all Western, are proposing laws that, you know, in broad strokes, say that everybody who has a server that the public interacts with, YouTube, Google, your email provider, your web host, your ISP, your phone company, have to retain all of their logs. They have to log everything we do, retain all of their logs, and give those logs over to basically anybody who asks for them without a warrant and not tell you about it. And you know, they have various arguments as to why this is constitutional, proportional, and right. But you know, computers are like, it's, you know, we don't allow, you know, a confessor or a spouse to be used to testify against you, because we recognize that the relationship there is something that is very precious and important. And if you lose the ability to trust your spouse, your confessor, your lawyer, then you lose something that makes us, as a society, free and whole. Our computers are more confessor than any priest has ever been. I mean, the things our computers know about us are amazing. And the power that we get from telling computers these things about us, from letting them know these things about us, is amazing too. It makes us whole and complete citizens of the digital age to be able to do that. And to turn that against us, I think, is a real problem. Congress has been not very good about technology issues by and large, but the one glaring exception has been SOPA and PIPA. You may remember there was a day last year when no kid in America could do their homework because Wikipedia was down. And that was the day when Wikipedia went down along with Reddit and Tumblr and many other sites to protest these crazy copyright laws that were proposed. Millions of Americans called their lawmakers on it, and the lawmakers backed off. Same thing happened with CISPA, which was the earlier cut of the Internet Security Act. What we can hope for is that the next time it happens, strength will lead to strength, and we'll build on this, and more will happen. And if you sign up for Electronic Frontier Foundation's mailing list or any of the others, Fight for the Future, Demand Progress, there are a bunch of these organizations that were key to fighting SOPA and PIPA. You'll find out when the next time it happens, comes around. The thing that gives me hope about this is that the number of people who understand that there's something important going on with the internet goes up every day, because the number of ways in which the internet is woven into our lives expands every day. So geeks love to pick on their grandparents for some reason. I mean, I hate this, right? Oh, my grandmother can't understand it. My grandmother, you know, can understand technology if she needs to. She's just in her 80s, and she kind of feels like she's got more important things to do with the years she's got left on this planet than watch progress bars. But having said that, I live in the United Kingdom. She lives in Toronto. When my daughter was born, her great-granddaughter, and she realized that the only way she was going to see her for more than 2 weeks a year that we were in Toronto was to get on Skype. She got on Skype. And now she understands, because getting on Skype is not rocket science. It's easy, right? Once you're on Skype, once this is a lifeline to your family, you understand that when you regulate the internet, you don't just regulate people's ability to download Police Academy movies without paying for them. You're regulating people's ability to be functional citizens of society and members of families. And so there's lots more people for whom this stuff matters. Our voice is growing.
One of your short stories, there's a part about a cult of wireheads, wires and brains on feelings and emotions.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk about why we would do that in singularity.
Sure. So there's a story I wrote called The Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. It's a story in 3 acts, and in the second act, there's people who put wires in their heads that let them feel each other's emotions. And when I talk a little about the idea of technological singularity. So singularity, for those of you who don't know, is this idea that's started in science fiction, and it's kind of spread to kind of utopian Silicon Valley types who either believe that it will happen or hope that it will happen or are trying to make it happen. The idea of singularity is that we will eventually merge our intelligence with those of computers. Maybe we'll be able to upload our personality to computers. And that when we do, we can go really fast. We can go as fast as computers. Our speed will double every couple of years. We can run multiple copies of ourselves. We can back ourselves up. We can merge our code with other people, and so on and so on. And this is kind of an exciting idea, but I think that it's just the continuation of a lot of transcendental ideas that we've had through the ages. I think we've always fantasized about transcending the weaknesses of the flesh and the problems of boring old default reality and being able to go somewhere even better. I think that before the Enlightenment, you had this idea of Lapsarianism. That was the idea that the world was getting worse and worse, that since we had left the Garden of Eden, with every year that passed, humanity's lot would get worse until we reached a point where it could get none more worse. And when it reached that point, we have Armageddon, we have apocalypse, right? Because the brain recoils from a thing that gets worse and worse and worse without reaching a point of no return, a point where worseness had been maximized, absolute worst, the absolute zero of awfulness. And after the Enlightenment, you get the idea of progressivism, that we will stand on the shoulders of giants, and then people will come and stand on our shoulders, and the world will get better and better and better. And I think the imagination recoils from that as well. And we say, well, eventually we must reach a point where we break with history, because things can't get any better. And at that point, you get the singularity. And I think that you can understand why a world that gets worse would make intuitive sense to your average Bronze Age prophet, bearded and wandering in the desert, because by the time you reach the ripe old age of 35 and all your teeth have fallen out, you clearly remember that back in the old days, things were much better. After all, back then, tastes were tastier, and sights were more vivid, and the people of your preferred gender were more preferential, and certainly the children were more polite. When you live in the progressive era, the technology is changing very quickly. And when you come up as a young, bright technocrat who got to laugh at everyone else for being roadkill on the information superhighway because they couldn't work their modems, and then you turn around one day and you realize that you can't figure out what's going on with technology, it's natural to assume that the reason you can't is because technology is no longer comprehensible, and not because you're getting old. And so it's nice to kind of externalize that and say, oh, we must be heading for a break with history, because if I can't understand this technology, surely technology has crossed the threshold beyond which humans can understand it. Yep.
I have a kind of a two-part question. First, if you could talk a little bit about the Creative Commons and what that is and why you use it. And secondly, my coworkers, librarians, kind of been having this debate recently about burning CDs and DVDs and what your thoughts are on, is that okay?
Burning CDs, DVDs, and what?
So we get a lot of people come into the library and they'll check out anything, CDs, music.
Oh, I see.
Copy.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. So the first question was, what about Creative Commons? So Creative Commons is a nonprofit with branches all over the world, and they do something very simple on its face, but very complicated and technical to accomplish, which is that they write copyright licenses that work with every country's legal system. And there's 4 or 5 of these licenses, and then you can slap them on your own works and say, under this license, I give you these permissions. And because the licenses work the same way everywhere in the world, because they're standardized, large numbers of people, an increasing number of people every day, know what the licenses mean. And that's pretty important, because how many licenses have you seen and you don't know what they mean, you can't figure out what they let you do, and before you act on them, you have to pay a lawyer $500 an hour to interpret them. And even then, the lawyer would say, well, I'm still not sure whether you're in the clear. I'm certainly not going to sign an indemnity for you. So licenses that actually are meaningful and that human beings can parse, that's a pretty cool idea. And the Creative Commons licenses are licenses that allow for sharing and reuse. So the most liberal Creative Commons license is the Creative Commons Attribution license that says you can do anything you want with this. You just have to let everyone know that it came from me. And then the next one up would be the Attribution Share Alike license, which says you can do anything you want with this. You have to let people know that it came from me, and you have to let other people do anything they want with whatever you make from this. And then Attribution Share Alike non-commercial would be you can do anything you want with this. You have to let people know that it came from me. You have to let other people make other things from it, and you can't make any money from it. And you can kind of imagine how those 3 things can be permutated, and that's the full suite of Creative Commons licenses. Again, as I said, there's about half a dozen of them. And hundreds of millions of works have been licensed under Creative Commons. My books are released under various Creative Commons licenses. I do that for lots of reasons. One is that I know that it's the 21st century. I can't stop you from copying if I want to. So one of the things I want to do is show you that I trust you to do the right thing. And so I allow you to, I give you my books, I let you share them, and I say, if you can afford them, I'd like it if you buy them. Or if you don't want to buy them, after having read it, you feel like you don't need a physical book and you don't want to buy another ebook, buy one for a library or school. And I have a long list of libraries and schools that would like copies of the books. And librarians and teachers send in their names and their addresses, their institutions to an assistant I have who lists them by geography. And we've given away thousands of books this way, connected readers and schools and libraries. It works pretty well, but there's 2 other reasons to do it. The first one is artistic, because it's the 21st century, and any art that people like is going to be copied. And so if you're making art that isn't intended to be copied, it's not contemporary art. It's an anachronistic art. Anachronistic art is awesome. If you want to be the armorer at a reenactment of the War of 1812, I think that's really cool. But it's not science fiction. Science fiction is meant to be at least contemporary, if not futuristic, and certainly not retro. And so, I find it very artistically satisfying to make art that's intended to be copied. And I find it morally satisfying, because one of the reasons that we're redesigning our computers to spy on people and control them is because it supposedly will help artists earn a living by somehow containing or controlling copying. And, I think that if there's one thing that should be a first principle for the arts, is that the arts should always be on the side of free speech and always on the side against censorship and surveillance. And if you come to a point where your artistic living depends on surveillance and censorship, you're doing art wrong. And so being able to opt out of that system where people can say, oh, well, the only reason I want to spy on you is so people like Cory can feed his family, I find that very satisfying. I also find it satisfying because I copy all the time. Copying is normal, copying is good. 4 billion years ago, some molecule figured out how to copy itself, and that's where we came from, right? Copying is hardwired in. We have a name for things that don't copy themselves. We call them extinct, right? When my daughter was born, my mom came to visit us in London. She's got a PhD in early childhood education. She's like a baby whisperer. And she came and she said, my daughter was about 2 weeks old. She said, you stuck your tongue out at her yet? I said, no, Mom, I haven't stuck my tongue out at my daughter yet. Why would I do that? And she picked my daughter. My daughter had never seen her tongue. She hadn't looked at a mirror. She hadn't really touched her tongue. She was still in that stage where babies just flail. And my mom picked her up, held her in her arms, and did this. And my daughter looked up at her, never seen her tongue before, and did this. Because we copy like we nuzzle for the breast, right? Copying is how we acquire language. Copying is how we acquire skills. Copying is how we build on the works that other people do. And so I copy all the time. When I was 17 years old, I copied everything I could get my hands on. your question about burning and ripping a little. If it wasn't for the mixtape, which was the accepted courtship ritual of my generation, celibate well into my 20s. And for me to say, well, when I did it, it was part of the legitimate artistic journey of a creative person, but when you do it, it's just theft. It's fixing my problem. Now, about burning and copying, I think that the answer to this is not to shake your finger at people and tell them that copying music and DVDs they bring home from the library is wrong. I think the answer to this is figuring out ways to get people paid when it happens. And so historically, whenever we've reached a point where we couldn't control the dissemination of the work, we've instituted some kind of blanket license to pay for it. So for example, when the first radio play came along, people who made records called it a form of theft. They said, you should know that people who made records got their start by ripping off the people who wrote sheet music. Right? John Philip Sousa hated records. He called them the infernal talking machine. He went to Congress and he said, if these infernal talking machines are allowed to go on, we will not have a voice box left in America. We will lose our voice boxes as we lost our tails when we came down out of the trees. Many points to John Philip Sousa for being an early advocate of the still controversial theory of natural selection, but he kind of missed the main event. So when the record people started to, when the radio people started to take the record people said, when we took the compositions from the sheet music people, that was progress. What these guys are doing, that's piracy. What did Congress do? They instituted a blanket license. So today, if a DJ drops the needle on a record, he doesn't call up the artist manager and say, I'm about to play, Inagata Vita. Is this going to cost me 25 cents, 15 cents? Will you take 25? He just plays the record. Plays it wherever he's gotten it. Pirate record, doesn't matter. iTunes, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it started as vinyl, doesn't matter if you got it at the library. Play any song you want on the radio. Money's collected from radio stations. The songs that are played are sampled using statistical sampling methods. The money's paid out to artists. Right? That's how you do cable TV. Cable operators are allowed to take any broadcast and put it on cable. It's how we do live performance. Every karaoke bar, every mall, every restaurant that plays live music, they all buy blanket licenses that allow them to do this. So the only people who can't are people who are involved in this kind of digital copying. It would be great if people could opt into blanket licenses that let them do the stuff that you're talking about. And if you price the blanket license right, then everyone who can afford it will opt in because it'll be cheaper than the hassle of possibly getting caught and done over. And the people who can't afford it would never have paid you anyway. And at the end of the day, are you more interested in making sure that everybody who's in a position to pay you pays you, or making sure that everybody who listens to music pays you? Because one group is going to be much smaller than the other, right? I want the largest number of dollars for my art, not to be sure that everyone who uses my art pays me. You can't eat indignation about the fact that someone got your art for free. And I want to buy my groceries with my art, not ensure that I have total control over its destiny. And I think that that's been the signal path of artistic regulation in this country, is to opt into these blanket licenses when they were possible. Yeah.
Saying that in your book you were inspired by 1984, or were you also inspired by Bradbury, by Arthur Clarke?
Right. Was I inspired?
Some of the others?
Sure. Who else inspired me besides Orwell to write Little Brother? Well, lots of writers, and I listed some of them in an afterword. There's a Chicago writer named Daniel Pinkwater who is like a hero of literature and deserves a kind of to be knighted for services to humanity. And he's got a new book out today called Bushman Lives. And certainly he's an enormous influence on me. Was I influenced by Heinlein? Absolutely. By Clarke? A little bit. I have the same agent as Clarke, actually now as Clarke's estate. And at one point I told my agent I'd come up with a law that I called Doctorow's Law. He said, no, you don't have one law, you have to have three. So I came up with two more. I've got a book that I've just finished called Information Doesn't Want to Be Free. That's about these three laws that my agent is presently shopping around. It has the three laws he demanded. It has an introduction by Neil Gaiman and another one by Matt Palmer, and it's a book about copyright. So it will be, I hope, out within a year or so. That would be very nice. I was influenced by lots of other writers. I'm with Jonathan Latham. I love being influenced. if any of you saw an essay called The Ecstasy of Influence that I just saw has been collected in a new Lethem book called The Ecstasy of Influence. He wrote this essay in Harper's, and it's about how everything he did was made up of the influences that went into his career as an artist. And he reveals halfway through the essay, spoiler alert, that all the sentences in the essay are sentences he lifted from other essays that other people wrote. And about the last third of the essay is footnotes. All the places he lifted his sentences. It's an amazing essay. Yep.
What's your views on self-publishing?
What are my views on self-publishing? I don't think there's anything wrong with it, provided you do it in the privacy of your own home and don't make the rest of us watch. No. I think that if you have a theory about how your works will get into the hands of readers, and you have reason to believe that that theory is a good one, that self-publishing can be a useful thing to do, especially if it's something that you find rewarding, sort of monkeying around with all the stuff involved with spreadsheets that isn't writing books. If, on the other hand, you just want to write books, having done some self-publishing, I'm here to tell you that you can. I made as much money, if not more, as I would have done if I'd gone through a traditional publisher on a short story collection that I self-published with a little help. But I spent an awful lot of time fiddling with it, and I kind of counted up the hours and realized that I could make more money writing another book and going back to a trad publisher. And so I think that there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. I think that the purpose of copyright policy should be to ensure that the widest diversity of artists makes the widest diversity of works with the widest diversity of audiences. And I think self-publishing clearly encompasses all kinds of work that, for one reason or another, doesn't fit the traditional publishing model. It has small audiences, it has unexpected audiences, it's something whose marketing is best done by the author themselves. When you think about all those sort of motivational speakers who publish, 17 ways to make your boss give you a raise, and go around giving seminars on it with their stack of self-published books, and they sell moderately well, and I'm sure they do very well for their authors, and there's something that would be of no use at all to a traditional publisher. So there's lots of reasons to self-publish. But unless you have that theory about how your audience will connect to your work and your work will connect to an audience, I think you end up with a basement full of books. Are we ready for time? One more question. Maybe someone who hasn't asked one yet? Is there anyone who hasn't asked a question who wants to ask one? Yeah.
Question. I'm not talking about privacy where, cameras are hidden in computers.
Right.
And people who should be watching people undress are watching them undress. But generally speaking, I often hear, what do I care if I'm being watched if I'm not doing anything wrong? If the company wants to see what I'm typing in while I'm at work, and at work, I shouldn't be walking around. So what do you say to people?
So I think we have an unfortunate, the question is, why should we care about privacy? Why do we care if our employers can see all the words that we type when we're on the job? So I think that we have a tendency to conflate private with secret. So we think that these things are secrets, so why would we care? And we go, well, it's not really a secret. Why should I care if I don't have any secrets? But there's lots of things that aren't secret, that are private. Every one of us in this room, I know what your parents did to me. But unless they're very special people, they kept it private. And it's not a secret what they did, but it is private. I know what you do when you go to the toilet. Because we all do more or less the same thing when we go to the toilet. It takes a very special kind of person to do it in public. And in general, people who do it in public do so because they're poor and have no choice and are shamed and humiliated and scarred by the experience. So there are lots of ways that you can be compromised by not having the privacy of your own thoughts, by not having the privacy of your own conscience. Being watched all the time means that all of your mistakes are recorded for posterity. And if you can't make mistakes, then you can't improve. Right? If you want to double your success rate, you have to triple your failure rate. But if you've ever watched a kid too closely while they were trying something out that was hard and that they were learning, and they became aware of the fact that you were watching them, even if you're keeping every scintilla of disapproval or disappointment, or hey, just let me show you how to, out of your body language, you know that it kills their self-experimentation. right? Because you need to be free from surveillance to make mistakes, to try out new things, to try things, to fail, to fall on your face, and to not have anyone standing there. There's other groups of people who need their privacy too. In general, people from more vulnerable groups have more to lose from having their privacy exposed. So, for example, people with health problems who don't want their employer to know about it. Women who are trying to get pregnant who worry about being dismissed. People who are gay or lesbian and are worried that their employers might discriminate against them. People who have things in their past that they'd rather their employer not know about, but they're nevertheless not criminal or not something that they're ashamed of, just things that they think their employer might look askance at. People who have a private life that's all their own and just don't want everybody else to know all their business all the time. So imagine you were at work one day and your husband drove up and he said, honey, is it time for your lunch break? And you go, yeah, I can go on lunch break. He said, come out to the parking lot. You go out to the parking lot and he says, honey, the cancer is terminal, right? You would expect that your employer would not have a CCTV camera and a microphone listening to that conversation. If your employer did, you would feel deeply violated, despite the fact that that conversation happened on company property. Now, if your spouse on Facebook sends a private message that says, honey, the cancer is terminal, and your employer raids your email while you're on your break by sneaking in a man-in-the-middle attack on your secure connection to Gmail or Facebook or whatever, and reads that email, you should feel every bit as violated. Not because you should be ashamed if your spouse has cancer, but because it's no one's business to know that until you tell them, right? It is something, I think, deep within what it means to be a human, to be able to have the privacy of your own head, and to be able to have the privacy of your own intimate relationships, and to be able to choose which parts of your relationship you show to different people. You know, Mark Zuckerberg says that people who have multiple facets to their identity, who show one face to their parents, another face to their friends, that they're hypocrites. I think that that's a crazy thing to say. I mean, we all know that you behave differently in church than you do on the toilet, right? We all know that there's a way that you talk to your kids that isn't how you talk to your boss. We all know that you do different things on the bar on Friday night after the big game than you do the next day at a company picnic, right? And if you're not free to have those different facets of your identity, it means that whatever the most constrained, most fraught, most shame-filled part of your life is the one that you're constrained to and confined to forever. And I don't think that's a life any of us want to live. I'm sorry. Oh, Cardinal Richelieu, of course. If you give me 6 lines in an honest man's hand, I'll find you a reason to hang him. That's another good one. So if someone decided to pick on you, knowing enough about your life, if you can spelunk through all the details of your life, you can find a reason to do something bad about you. And then the other one, of course, if you've ever seen the movie Brazil, there's a terrible problem, which is that if there's an algorithm that's used to sift through mountains of data to figure out who's guilty, and that algorithm is unassailable because you can't even look at it for security reasons, then having data gathered on you increases the chance that you'll generate a false positive and be sent off for a cavity search or fired from your job or put on a no-fly list or any of the denied insurance or denied mortgage or any of those other things that can happen to you that have real impact on your life even if you've done nothing wrong. So thank you all very much for coming.
We did raffle off 3 sets of Cory's books, so I have the winners. Marion Johnson, on a set. Brendan Ferber. Brenda, okay. And Melanie Silver.